course, residential school survivors still searching for answers after yesterday's discovery. Nola Jeffrey is the executive director of the Tsow-Tun Society in Lanceville, British Columbia. It is a healing center that runs a support line. Nola, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Good morning.
What have the past, I guess, week or so been like in terms of the calls that you've been receiving and what people have been telling you?
Well, it's been about 3 weeks, and we have been extremely busy. Not only our support line, but the Indian Residential School line, the KUOS line, and people are hurt. There's huge grief. And all the other feelings that you could imagine go with that. There's people that are angry. There's people that are, even though they knew the truth, it's still a shock to the body to find that many children.
And it's a shock, as you mentioned there, to those that have lived it, as well as to their families who are realizing what their parents or their grandparents may have gone through, many of them not feeling the strength to share these types of stories. What is it that you're trying to do to help them?
What we're trying to do is to have an open heart and an open mind, to listen from a loving place, from a caring place, to help them to ground, to process, to allow whatever they're feeling to come up and to come out, and just to be there to support them.
Mm-hmm. Hearing what they need, hearing the stories that they're telling you, or just as you say, needing to have that support. What you're hearing from the government, what we're hearing in some cases from the Catholic Church, is that some sense of comfort? Is that the right start they need?
Sorry, I can't answer that question for anyone. Each individual needs to answer that question for themselves, but I think the truth has to come out, and that the records have to come out, and that the support needs to be there to find all of those unmarked graves, to identify who those children are, to bring those children home to their families, and for everybody to start healing. And that's Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, that we need to walk through this together, and we need to support each other and lift each other up, because this impacts everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly does. And I'm just reading some of the comments that you had when you were speaking to our Chase producer on this. One of the concerns that you have is, as we are continuing to talk about this, it is something that unfortunately is in the headlines. Your concern is that you don't want the conversation, the support to disappear when it's no longer a headline. Talk to me a little bit more about that and how that, as you say, we need to be bounded together through all of this. It's not a, them versus us, or this happened to you, it didn't happen to me, but it becomes something that we need to keep together on continuously versus just dealing with the certain situation we're seeing right now.
What non-Indigenous people have told me is that they feel a lot of shame and guilt. There's a lot of shame and guilt there. And those are hard feelings to face and to know what to do with that. And I heard the Prime Minister say that we can't go back, we need to go forward. And this is the teachings that have been given by our elders, by our ancestors, that we need to walk forward. And so how do we walk forward in a good way? And it's by not forgetting, by remembering, and by educating yourselves, by learning, and then giving that love and that support. And, I always say to people, all we have to do is look at our children and our grandchildren and know how precious they are. And those children that died in those residential schools, and those children that survived those residential schools, suffered unbelievable harms that I can't talk about because it's their story. I can't tell their story, but I've worked at Tsow-Tun for over 22 years. We run a trauma program for survivors and intergenerational survivors. I was part of the TRC within BC and the national TRCs, and I heard their stories over and over again. And I always say those, just recently, those schools weren't schools, because schools are a place where you go to learn, where you're nurtured, where your gifts are brought forward, where you're cared for. And that didn't happen in these places.
No.
It was exactly the opposite.
Yeah, you're right. And we've heard some of them brave enough to tell us some of those stories, and it's just unbelievably shocking. But we appreciate you coming onto our program. We appreciate all the work that you've been doing to help. And you're absolutely right. All of this needs to continue, where we hear their stories, but we continue to embrace and support them, support everyone together. Nola Jeffrey, thank you so much for giving me your time today. Stay well and safe.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You as well.